Hello. It says we are live on LinkedIn. Hello to people who are joining us here at the beginning. I'm Mark Graban, and I'm happy to be hosting the session here today in partnership with Rebecca Michaelek from AME Australia, because we're going to be talking about an exciting opportunity. I'm going to be coming to Australia and New Zealand to do some workshops in March 2025. So we're going to be talking about that and previewing that today. I am from the United States. I'm from the middle part of the country, Cincinnati, Ohio area. I would love to hear for people tuned in, if you want to put into the comments where you're joining us from. We tried to invite people specifically from Australia and New Zealand. It's Thursday. Happy Thursday morning to you, but I'm sure we've also got people that are joining us from other locations. So we'd love to hear where you're from, put that in. Introduce myself a little bit if you are unfamiliar with me, and Rebecca is going to introduce herself and AME Australia if you're unfamiliar with her and that organization. But I am, as it says on screen here, I guess among other things, an author of multiple books, a speaker, a consultant. I enjoy helping organizations improve and helping leaders engage people in improvement in different ways. So my most recent books are, I guess I'll work backwards, The Mistakes That Make Us, Cultivating a Culture of Learning and Innovation, that came out last year. About 5 years earlier, I wrote and published a book called Measures of Success: React Less, Lead Better, Improve More. And previous books include Healthcare Kaizen, about continuous improvement in healthcare, co-authored with Joe Schwartz, and my first book, Lean Hospitals, which is now 15, 16 years later in its third edition. So we've got Paul joining us from Perth. Hello. We've got Laura from Melbourne. So welcome. Thank you for being here. So Rebecca, let me bring you into the discussion here and ask you to introduce yourself and AME Australia.
Sure. Thank you, Mark, for that intro. And yes, good morning. Good morning to the Australians and the New Zealanders who are here. And so my name's Rebecca Michaelek, as Mark said, and I've got the privilege at the moment of serving as the current president of AME Australia. And so for those who might not be familiar, AME, or the Association for Manufacturing Excellence, we're a global network dedicated to continuous improvement and enterprise excellence. So our mission is to bring together professionals and organisations to share, learn and grow together in the pursuit of operational excellence, leadership development and transformative thinking. So what makes AME unique is our focus on practitioner to practitioner learning, and we do that through conferences, workshops, site tours and webinars. And we create opportunities for leaders to connect with real-world case studies and, most importantly, those actionable insights. So it's not just about the ideas, it's about implementing those and supporting one another to drive measurable outcomes. So one of our favourite ways to connect at AME and really learn together is through our annual roadshows. And this is where we invite thought leaders from around the world and we take them on the road with us, so to speak, and bring the opportunity for learning from these people to our members in their own cities. And so early 2005 is an exciting time for us because we'll be on the road with Mark. And so as Mark's already introduced himself, like he's a globally recognised expert in lean thinking and operational excellence. And through this roadshow, AME will bring Mark's expertise to our Australian members. And this time, super excited to mention this one, is also to our New Zealand community. Mm-hmm. So we're really excited to be inspired by his insights as we're all tackling, pressures and challenges day to day. So with that said, we're here today to learn a bit more about what Mark will be bringing to the roadshow and our community. And so, Mark, I've got a few questions for you. So are you ready? Shall we begin?
Oh, sure. And I also want to say hello to a couple other people who've said hello. David from Newcastle, New South Wales. Rob from Mackay. So thank you for being here. And let me add just two other details. This will be my first trip, long overdue, at the age of 51. I have never been to Australia or New Zealand. So I am very thrilled and honored to have the invitation from Rebecca and the team at AME. My wife, through her work, has been to Australia and New Zealand many times, and I've heard such great things about the people and the cities and getting out of the cities. So I'm really excited to come and experience that for myself. And then one other thing, just kind of biographically, because a couple of those books are very healthcare centric, I kind of want to emphasize that these are not healthcare workshops. Like, we think there will, as we get into the topics, there will be benefit to people from healthcare. I've met people from Australian healthcare organizations who have come to the US for conferences. But I started my career in manufacturing. I've worked with two different software companies, including one over the last 12 years, a company called KaiNexus, which has customers in Australia that we're going to be inviting to these workshops. So I just want to emphasize, I feel like I've got a broad, as you put it, lean thinking background, lean action in different settings. So that's, I think, a little bit more of the context for the roadshow and the workshops.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. So if we can keep you talking a little bit more about the content of what you might be bringing along. So keen to understand what the themes are of the workshops that you're running.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like this phrase, improving the way we improve. And, that's been important to me throughout my career, as I've tried to learn new things and sharpen the saw, if you will, to use, it's not just the Stephen Covey expression. We can apply continuous improvement or breakthrough thinking to the way we coach people through continuous improvement and breakthrough transformational process redesign and reinvention. So we have two topics, 2 half days of the workshop that in my experience, actually connect together fairly well. So the first half, the first half day workshop is titled Psychological Safety as a Foundation for Continuous Improvement. And psychological safety, for those who aren't familiar with the phrase, it really just means how it's an individual's feeling or perception of how safe you feel in a given team or situation to speak candidly without punishment. So that means things like pointing out lean thinkers, lean practitioners who are watching and listening will realize, well, yes, we want people to feel safe pointing out problems, but sometimes they don't. Asking questions, admitting mistakes, sharing improvement ideas, or even just disagreeing with your manager or others. Sadly, when people feel unsafe, when they feel fearful, or when it's been demonstrated to them it's kind of dangerous, people will protect themselves by keeping quiet. So this really is, I think, a key foundation to Toyota and other organizations. And, in that workshop, we want to not just define the problem statement of people not speaking up, but share really practical tips for leaders. We can't just encourage people that you should feel safe. There are some key practices that leaders can put in place to help people feel safe. So that's really kind of the first part. Do you want me also to talk about the second half of the day?
Yes, please keep going.
Okay. So the second half is really titled the same as my 2018 book, Measures of Success. And, if the problem statement for the first half of the workshop is, we see people aren't speaking up, let's not blame them for that. Let's engage them. If, people aren't adopting or embracing lean methods, we can look at the foundation. How do we strengthen psychological safety? The second part here is really about the use of performance measures or KPIs, metrics. There's so many different words we could use, but the problem statement for this is, leaders and organizations, if you will, chasing their tail or being on a roller coaster of, kind of overreacting to every up and down in a performance measure. Metric gets better, we celebrate. Then the metric gets worse, and maybe somebody gets upset. And, it's really important to learn how to distinguish, if you will, signal statistically meaningful changes in performance to the noise of just metrics that are fluctuating around an average. So I'm really fortunate early in my career to have learned statistical methods called process behavior charts. It's a way of visualizing our performance data, and then more importantly, giving us some easily calculated guardrails to know when we're just fluctuating around an average and when things have shifted. So in the workshop, we'll do a lot of interactive things to better understand the basis for process behavior charts. We'll create them. We'll learn how to use them. And again, it ties in really well to lean. The fact that we're using metrics like this isn't, these are methods that long predate Six Sigma. It's something that does incorporate really well into a lean methodology, because then we can better understand the cause and effect of our attempts at improvement and answering the question, are we really moving the needle on performance?
That sounds so exciting. The connection with the people, so taking the tools and the data and building the culture through that connection sounds like the absolute secret sauce that most people are looking to try and figure out how to, elevate the impact or optimize the work that they're doing in this space. So those two workshops together in one day sound really exciting, to be paired that way.
Well, thank you. And, that second one, even though there's some statistics involved, it really connects deeply to people, because employees get frustrated when there's these constant swings and emotion of celebrating a day that's a little better than average and being upset about a day that's slightly below average. That gets frustrating. That might be one reason people disengage when they're not, feeling like there's a connection. Like, I did the same work the same way as I did yesterday and we got a different result. That happens sometimes. So there's variation in our workplaces. And again, if that variation can be described as noise, we can save a lot of time not asking for a root cause for yesterday's performance that was a little different. We can save a lot of time and really focus our problem solving skills and the engagement of our people, kind of reacting to signals and big meaningful changes or shifts in performance.
Terrific. Thank you. Just another question on that, just to take it that next step further. Can you share an example or two about organisations that have successfully applied the principles that you're going to cover in the roadshow?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to psychological safety and continuous improvement, one organization that's meaningful to me and I have a close relationship with is KaiNexus. For the 12, 13 years of its history on the market, as the company's grown from the two co-founders and myself to being a team of 50 people, because we serve people that are using continuous improvement mindsets and methodologies, they are our customers. KaiNexus has always strived to be a culture of continuous improvement. When I got to study psychological safety, real formally about a little over 2 years ago, and you start learning some language and the practices that help people feel psychologically safe, I recognize that is the environment at KaiNexus. It is not an environment where individuals get punished for systemic mistakes. That's a Toyota mindset. When I was in Japan last week with Katie Anderson, previous roadshow participant, Toyota suppliers that we visited emphasized they do not punish individuals for systemic problems. They want people to feel safe. You have to react positively when people share negative news. And, so KaiNexus has a long history of that. But over the last 2 years, I did some training around psychological safety terminology. And I think a lot of people recognized, yeah, intuitively, that's what we've been doing. We did a survey, anonymous survey across the organization, and KaiNexus ranked in the 80th percentile of organizations around the world that have taken that survey. So that kind of validated my gut sense that, yeah, I feel safe speaking up at KaiNexus, and you see evidence where people do share mistakes that they've made so that others can learn. People admit when there's a problem so we can address it because they're not afraid of being yelled at or punished or fired. So I think KaiNexus is a great example of that. I think for the afternoon material, there is a health system in Eastern Ohio called Memorial Health System, where I did a workshop with them in 2019, teaching about these process behavior chart methods. And a lot of people, including the CEO, took a real keen interest in this methodology. And their process excellence team was training a lot of people, helping them start using process behavior charts. But now, as a culture shift, the CEO is emphasizing to people that these charts are important, and I think better yet, let's stop reacting to all the noise, right? So the CEO looks at their high-level financial measures through that lens and through that mindset. People that are doing process improvement projects are presenting before and after data using that mindset. And when they're reviewing operational metrics at different levels of the organization, they're using those same mindsets. And I've done some interviews. I had a chance to go back and visit recently. I'm going to be able to publish some of their own, in their own words, why this methodology has been helpful. It does save them time. They review, by exception, metrics that show statistical signals. And when they were doing some work to try to reduce deaths by sepsis, which is widely considered to be preventable if you have a good process for detecting and responding to the symptoms of sepsis, they had a lot of improvement attempts that they learned weren't really moving the needle. Understanding cause and effect between what they were doing and that important measure and it's people's lives. It's not just a measure. Because then, they better understood that, they pushed themselves to keep trying different countermeasures until they found ones that were driving significant reductions in those sepsis deaths. So, the CEO of that health system said, it was powerful to hear that they think they've been saving lives by better understanding the statistics behind some of these really important performance measures. So that CEO is excited to try to help share the story to help open people's eyes, because the last thing I'll say here, as you said earlier, Rebecca, it's secret sauce, but it's not a secret proprietary methodology. It's been out there in the world. The books of Don Wheeler, what the late W. Edwards Deming was trying to teach. I'm trying to bang that drum and kind of expose people to something they might not have been taught about in school or in Lean or Lean Six Sigma classes.
Terrific. And the other thing that really struck me in what you were describing there, Mark, was how much of an impact and influence leaders have in an organization like that. And whether you're a leader of a small team or you're higher up in the organization, there is a flow-on effect, really, of like what you said as the expectation and how that influences the culture.
And yeah, leading by example. When that CEO stops overreacting to noise in somebody's metric, and instead focuses on better problem solving, that's powerful. And when Greg Jacobson, the CEO at KaiNexus, and other leaders lead by example of saying things that in some workplaces is risky or vulnerable, to say, I don't know, let's go find it out. Like none of us can have all the answers, and senior leaders don't have all the answers. So when they're willing to admit that sets a good example for their employees. And then when an employee says, I don't know, let's go find out, reward them for following your lead, admitting mistakes. When we have an idea for improvement, not being so sure that it's a quote unquote solution, let's go test the countermeasure on a small scale. Like we have a solid hypothesis that doing this is going to lead to improvement, but just because it's the CEO's pet project, don't just, plow ahead without testing the change first. So, things like that are powerful. And one of the common threads is, leaders build culture by leading by example with certain key behaviors and mindsets.
Oh, there's a lot in there, Mark, that I'd love to unpack. But before, I guess the roadshow's there for that. But I would like to ask a question more personal to you, perhaps. And that's what's one insight or lesson that you've learned during your career that you think every leader should know?
Well, I mean, I can tell a shorter version of it, but it's this idea that I managed to learn like right in the beginning of my career, distinguishing signal from noise in performance measures. Well, whether that's hour by hour performance on an assembly line, whether that's daily metrics, whether that's monthly metrics, leading measures, lagging measures, shop floor measures, strategy deployment, or Hoshin Conry measures. Like I was fortunate that I give credit to my dad. He'd taken a workshop with the statistics professor Donald Wheeler, who's still active and teaching and working today in Knoxville, Tennessee. So my dad had a copy of his book, I would call a classic book, called Understanding Variation: The Key to Managing Chaos. And I've given so many copies of that book away to people when I was in manufacturing, when I've been in healthcare, and Don Wheeler wrote the foreword for my book, Measures of Success, which I was thrilled that he did that. These lessons, it's just it's so powerful, but it's something most people haven't been exposed to. So the alternatives is that people use what in the U.S. is, I don't know how this translates, Rebecca, help me, the idea of a quote unquote bowler or a bowling chart. Okay, I have to.
Bowling chart. Maybe someone in the chat's welcome to explain that. If you've got the connection.
Playing the game bowling, the bowling ball and 10 pins. I don't know.
We do have that. Yes, we have bowling here.
Right. So when you keep score when you're playing bowling, it's just a grid of numbers, going from left to right, frame by frame. A lot of really good lean transformations, I think, could be even better if they shifted that view of metrics being just a list of numbers. Like the human brain is not built to process that. So even if we're not using full-blown process behavior charts, a better visualization of the data is a run chart, or what Excel would call a line chart. I'm going to draw one with my finger here. I mean, you can just see visually and get a much better sense of, are there real trends or shifts over time? Is there a data point that's really an outlier? It's just so much easier to see when you visualize it as a run chart, or again, a process behavior chart gives you some guardrail so you don't have to guess, is that data point a signal or an outlier? Like there's a really solid and simple statistical basis for where we calculate these we call them limits. It's a way of detecting when the system has changed and when we should then maybe do an A3, do a root cause problem solving, and focus our precious time and problem solving skills, where it's most needed. So, that's the, and there's times where I've been in workplaces where I was very, very junior, and I tried opening people's eyes to this, and I tried sharing the book. And the one thing that's tough is, that Don Wheeler's book, and I think my book as a follow-on, and process behavior charts are a solution to a problem that some people might not recognize as being a problem. So that's one thing I hope to kind of help open people's eyes to in the workshop. And thankfully there are good methods and solutions and countermeasures that I can teach as well.
Amazing. So maybe just to put it in place of, like, from the opinion of the people who might be attending, what would you expect that an actionable step that attendees to your roadshow would be able to implement immediately after?
Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes to psychological safety as a foundation for lean and continuous improvement, I think people will walk away with some terminology. I think having standard work, if you will, in the way we talk about people's feeling of safety to speak up in different ways, as I mentioned earlier. All the different ways people want or need to speak up in the context of a workplace and lean management. People will walk away with some very specific actions they can take as leaders to help boost the feeling of psychological safety. We can talk about different ways you can survey to get a measurable sense of it, the way KaiNexus did, or even looking at metrics like how many employee ideas are being submitted, how many times are people activating the and-on system, how many times, this is a time of year where people might be going through their cycles of Hosh and Connery, and if you have this so-called catch ball, how often is somebody pushing back? How often is the ball actually being tossed back and forth? And how often is it just a top-down deployment? Because someone might not agree with the priorities or the goals. And if they censor themselves instead of speaking up, that's not helpful. So I think those are some of the key takeaways from the morning. And again, this might sound like just a bunch of fluffy talk, but I think it's very practical, very actionable. It's critically important. And then in the afternoon, I think some of the key takeaways are, kind of a list of things to maybe stop doing, like reacting to every up and down, distinguishing the difference between like red and green data points. Sometimes shifting from red to green doesn't mean it's really meaningfully better. It could be a metric could be fluctuating from red to green very often, and that's just noise in the system. So we can learn some of the things to not do. So the subtitle of the book starts with, react less. And then the things to do is, this process behavior chart methodology, how to create them. People will be invited to bring their own data. I can give some coaching and we can review with each other and see what we learn from looking at our data in a different way. So those are things I hope people would take back to their organization and start putting into place right away, or trying to educate others about the possibility of using process behavior charts to manage differently, to lead differently, and to I think strengthen our lean and continuous improvement approaches.
There's a lot in that. It's exciting too. So, Mark, look, we're getting towards the end of the time we've got here, and it feels like, we're really just beginning in a way. Yeah. But what's one thing you would say to somebody listening who might be on the fence, maybe about whether to attend or not? What's one thing that you would say to them to encourage them to come along?
Yeah, I hope people would come for the benefits of doing an in-person workshop. It's not just to sit and be lectured to. It's to participate in hands-on exercises. In particular, in the afternoon around process behavior charts, I'm going to be bringing with me in my suitcase, the red bead game kit, or the red bead experiment, as made famous by W. Edwards Deming. Facilitating that is, I think, a great experiential learning opportunity for people to actually participate. And then we start building some intuition and some sense, and then we can put some statistics to it of, when do we have a stable, unchanging process that's generating variable results? And how do we connect that to metrics in our workplaces? So I think that's something that is best experienced in person, not just reading about it, not just watching a video about it, but really coming and volunteering to be a participant, hands-on participant in the exercise, which 12 people get to, very actively participate in. And I think, in the morning around the discussions around psychological safety and lean, to participate in discussions with your peers and colleagues from different companies and different industries, I think is a great opportunity to strengthen the learning and maybe even build a network of people that between one topic or the other that you keep in touch with afterwards. So that's why we're not doing it as a virtual workshop. I think there's so much benefit. And again, I'm thrilled to have the invitation to come down to Australia and New Zealand and do this in person with people. And there's a comment here from Paul. He says, I'm going to continue promoting this, his words, I'm going to say, promoting your brilliant mistakes book through LinkedIn. Paul has done a lot of that, so thank you. He says, looking forward to meeting with you in Brisbane. So I am certainly looking forward to that as well, Paul. I can sign your well-worn, well-read, marked up copy of the book that I've seen you share pictures of on LinkedIn. So thank you for that, Paul.
So maybe this is the time to share a little bit more details about the dates. Perhaps we can put them up on the screen, and we'll just go through. The roadshow this in 2025 has 6 stops on the tour. So on the 18th of March, we'll be at Geelong. So beautiful spot, gateway to the Great Ocean Road, and some fabulous professionals and organisations around in the regional areas of Victoria. And that may come along to that one, or we encourage you to come along. On the 20th of March, we'll be in Melbourne. The 24th of March to Adelaide, 26th of March to Brisbane, 1st of April will be in Sydney, and then 3rd of April over to Auckland. So for somebody who hasn't been to Australia and New Zealand before, Mark will give you a taste of some of the highlights, but of course many, many cities are not covered here that you'll just have to come back and see, I think. Will be
I'll look forward to that. Australia, I know, is a huge country like the US is, but I'm glad we get to
absolutely
do this in so many cities.
Yes, and so what we want to launch here now, though, today with those who are listening, is our exclusive offers for this this roadshow, which we're really excited to share. So the first 15 tickets that are purchased in each city will get a special prize, and that is, there's 2. So the first 10 will be they'll unlock a VIP prize package. So that'll be an exclusive dinner with Mark himself. And so what better way to have some, over a relaxed setting, some additional discussions and deeper understanding from what we can gain from the workshop, and, you know, make it a little more personal for you in your organisation situation. So really exciting opportunity there. And then for the others, you'll still those people who register and pay before December 20, so they go into the mix to win the dinner with Mark. But those who don't get into that top 10 will also get a copy of Mark's acclaimed book, The Mistakes That Make Us. So this is the one that Mark's been referring to a little bit today. So so we need to act fast, try and close all of this off before the end of the year and get your tickets for you and your team or a few people from work. We want them ordered and purchased by December 20 to be in the running to win.
Yeah, and these are great topics to come with a team, as you suggested, Rebecca. So if you're a leader, you can either bring some people from your team or bring some of your peer leaders. And, you know, I think a great opportunity to talk through the application back in your organization. So, you know, with any of these workshops, we want people to be able to go to back to work the next day or the next week, and to be able to do something different and deepen the learning through that doing.
All right, so I think that unless there are any other questions that are coming through on the chat, which it doesn't seem to be, Mark, I think we are able to wrap up.
Okay, well, we will wrap this up. And thank you again, Rebecca, for doing the LinkedIn Live with me. And again, thank you for your trust in me to come down to Australia and New Zealand and put on some workshops that people are really going to enjoy, and, you know, hopefully find to be, I expect to be, I've done these workshops enough to feel confident that there are great takeaways. I've taught these workshops in different countries, most recently in Brazil in September, and, you know, it's kind of final thing I'll say here is it just kind of strengthened my belief that a lot of these issues around operations and improvement and leadership and culture are really universal. Like, there are differences in our countries, of course, but I think there are some pretty universal needs that people have to speak up at work when they want to. They want to help improve. They want to be engaged, and I'm just really fortunate we'll help people in Australia and New Zealand.
Thanks, Mark. We're really looking forward to seeing you next year and getting on the road together.
On the road, on the planes.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in or is watching the recording. If you're looking at the recording on LinkedIn, there will be some links that Laura Robertson shared. I'll make sure that it's in the YouTube video description if you're watching this there. So, Rebecca, I think I'll say good night, good morning. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mark. Good night to you, and have a great day to everybody listening.